Live from clickorlando.com, this is News 6 at 5:30. This is a News 6 Plus takeover. Here now is Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells with Talk to Tom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talk to Tom. I am Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells. This is what we call Talk to Tom. Started out many moons ago, back in 2004 during the hurricane season, so you could talk to me on TV. You could call in. I would take your call and try to answer what was going on in Central Florida, try to give folks during hurricanes, a chance to kind of talk to someone, calm down, try to rest assured you're going to be okay. It built up to where I did it on Facebook every day while I was doing radio weather. And then during the last hurricane season, during Hurricane Ian, my general manager thought it went so well. He's like, dude, that should be on all the time. So we started doing Talk to Tom every Thursday at 5:30. A little bit different vibe, but I do still get to take your questions. You can send us your questions anytime you want to at clickorlando.com/talk to Tom, and I'll try to answer them. Sometimes we'll be able to get you on through a Zoom, let you talk to me face to face, and sometimes we'll just do them like we're going to do them today. Our first question comes from our friend, Anthony Marchese. Anthony was not able to call in today, but he says, when we were living in Winter Garden, my house was hit by lightning 3 times. My wife and I now live in Southeast Palm Bay. We have considered those spiky roof lightning rods. My question is, do the spiky rods work, or do they make the situation worse by attracting lightning to their location? Okay, Anthony, great question. First of all, I'm glad you're in love with Central Florida and live not only in Winter Garden, but now in Southeast Palm Bay. Hey, lightning rods do work. They do not attract lightning, even if you get the tall, spiky ones. And if you put them on your house this day and age, that's really not what they're going to look like. You're used to seeing things like out in the Midwest or out in a farming community where you go by a barn. Those great big spikes are up every 6 to 12 feet along the house with pieces running down to the ground. What the lightning rods do, or what the lightning systems do, is that if your house is hit by lightning and that lightning starts to spread out through your roof, it'll hit that metal and shoot down the metal. What you want is to have some way to transfer the lightning. If the lightning hits like your roof line and you're not protected, it runs through, let's say, a wooden beam. Wood does not transfer lightning or electricity as well as metal. So it builds up and all of a sudden, boom, it explodes into a ball of fire. If it hits your roof, it starts to spread out and hits that metal. The metal conducts it and disperses that lightning quickly down its frame, shoots it into the ground, and in the underground around where your house is, they will have buried where they want the lightning to go. They'll bury the leaders all the way down into the ground. It does not attract lightning, but it disperses the lightning when it hits your house or the target. That's the idea behind a lightning rod. And no, it does not attract lightning. It's not a bad idea to have them. I will tell you, I do not have a lightning system on my house. My house does not have that. So, all right, next question from Rick M., who wants to know, do you recommend people leave an indoor swimming pool when lightning is the area? And if so, how close? Okay, Rick M., we were just talking about this in the break earlier. Yeah, I would say get out of that pool for the same reason you don't want to take a shower during a heavy thunderstorm. You don't want to sit in a bubble bath in your bathtub during a thunderstorm. And you don't want to be on a landline phone. You can be on your cell phone inside your house, but you can't be on a landline phone during a thunderstorm, or you shouldn't be. Because if you do, you run the risk of being bit or struck by lightning. And here's the deal. Anytime your house is struck by lightning, or the yard is struck by lightning, or maybe the plumbing, it runs through the plumbing, can disperse through your house, come right up, right into your bathtub, or right into your shower, through your shower head, and leap from the shower head, boom, and hit you in the head. It won't really run through the water, I don't think. I mean, it could. If running water's coming, it could run through the water. But chances are it's going to run through the metal, come into your bathroom, and boom, strike you there. So you don't want to be in the shower. You don't want to be in the bathtub. And you absolutely, positively do not want to be in a big body of water, even though it might be covered, an indoor swimming pool during a lightning storm. I've been at water polo games where they had to pull kids out of the water down at the aquatic center on I Drive during a big thunderstorm to get the kids out of the water. We shut it down. They sure do, for safety reasons. Absolutely. You can never be assured that the lightning won't hit the building or won't hit outside or hit the building, track in the plumbing, and get the kids in the pool. So get out of the indoor pool. Yep, I'd say shut her down. Now, how close? I'd say 8 miles. The term that we always use is if you can hear it, fear it. If you see it, you really got to flee it. So if it's within 5 miles, absolutely. If it's within 8, I still would shut it down. I don't feel safe if it's within 10. So if you got the lightning tracker right here on your phone, get the WKMG weather app right here on your phone, and it's like having radar and lightning tracker in your pocket. So you can go there and we track the lightning if it's within 8 to 10 miles. I would say pull the kids out, get yourself out, wait till 30 minutes after the last lightning strike, at least the last rumble of thunder before you get back in. Okay, thanks, Rick. Next question is from Rick Mowry, who says, it appears that global warming may have started 80 to 100 years ago. Since most of the record high temperatures were set in the 1920s and 30s, range, do you agree? Okay, that's a big assumption there, Rick, that most are set 20s and 30s. That's not really true. They're kind of all over the board. Lots of them have been set in the 2000s. Lots of them were set in the 50s. There are some that date back to the 20s and 30s. As I'm recording this just yesterday, I remember the daytime record high that we tied the other day was set in 1918, and we tied that record. So that wasn't really the 20s and 30s. That was pre that. So when did global warming start? Great question. Depends on who you talk to and what expert you're talking with and how you're judging when did the warming begin. Some people believe the warming actually began on a small scale in the 1500s, once we as humans started burning coal and adding more carbon to the atmosphere, and populations exploded. Keep in mind that if there weren't many humans on the planet, if we weren't here, we wouldn't be burning coal. We wouldn't be burning fossil fuels, gasoline. We wouldn't be putting carbon in the atmosphere, but we did. And starting in the 1600s is when that really got to going. And then really cranked it up, I believe, in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s. And then with the true arrival of the Industrial Revolution is when it really became more of a big factor. So I would say that, yes, global warming did start a long time ago. We've just been able to recognize the footprint of it more in the last 100 years. Now that we have almost 200 years of records to look at, we have to go back when we're digging farther back and look at ice cores or cores from coral reefs or cores from trees that are cut down and destroyed to try to figure out when things expanded, when things were really hot, what fluctuations are normal and what's out of range. And what we've been going through in the last few years, the last decade and a half, maybe 20 years, is way out of range. We've had like the 5 or 10 hottest years on record have all been within the last 10 or 15 years. It's crazy how hot things have suddenly gotten, and it's become the new normal. I hype on it a lot during Talk to Tom, questions every week, and on our Forecasting Change segment. We normally feature that at 7 o'clock on Thursdays, Forecasting Change. Check us out. Remember, you can always submit questions anytime on clickorlando.com/talk to Tom. And if you'll stay with us for just a few minutes, we'll come back and talk about golf. Well, we're at least going to talk about the man who's helping to keep people safe while they're out in the open playing golf. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Talk to Tom, everyone. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells. Thank you for being here for the second half of the show. First half of the show, we almost always answer your questions. And remember, if you want to submit a question, clickorlando.com/talk to Tom. We'd love to know what you want to know in Central Florida. Right now, we want to talk sports. I was almost a sportscaster once. I was, truly, before I got steered into meteorology. People in Florida love to golf. It's not my bag, but I'm like the only one here that doesn't own a set of golf clubs. Whether it's getting out on the green with your friends, corporate or sporting events, golf is super popular. But with all the lightning we have in our state, there's almost always a risk. You do not want to be standing around with a 5-iron at the wrong time. That is where event forecasting comes into play. Jake Swick is the managing director of Thorgard. Did I say your name correctly, Jake? Jake Swick?
You've got it, Tom.
Awesome. Hey, man, welcome to Talk to Tom, Jake. It's so wonderful you have time to talk to us today. They say you do prediction for golf events. What events are you doing weather for?
So I started back in 2002 on the PGA Tour. And I worked with a company that kind of covered pretty much every golf organization out there. And I did that for like 3 years. And actually, about halfway through that 3 year period, I got married, and my wife's also a meteorologist as well, funny enough. And she worked some events too. And then we knew we couldn't do the road life forever. And so around 2004, 2005, we stopped traveling 35 weeks a year. And I've been predominantly working with the USGA since then with Thorgard. But then in the last couple of years, we picked up things like Live Golf. And along the way, we've also done some LPGA events. But I've worked state fairs before. I've worked, college football games. I've been kind of all over, but predominantly with golf.
Okay, cool. So where did you go to college? Where did you study meteorology? I didn't ask you that.
No, that's okay. I went to Millersville University up in Lancaster, PA. We both actually went there. I grew up in the DC area and could have gone to Penn State and been like one out of a gazillion meteorologists, or
Yeah.
I thought about going to SUNY Oswego, like Al Roker did, even though I think his degree is in communications, but don't quote me on that.
Right. He's not. We can talk.
And then UNC Asheville, I went down there to look at their basketball program.
Yeah,
I was a basketball and golfer going into college.
Mhm.
And so with golf and weather for me as a job for the past 20 plus years, it's been amazing.
So I didn't hear you mention Western Kentucky or the Ohio State University. You're prejudiced against my schools. What? No.
I flew right over them when my grandfather took me to the University of North Dakota at Grand Forks. And
that's a good school for meteorology too.
A great aviation meteorology school. Florida State's great with hurricanes. Oklahoma's great with tornadoes. Penn State's great for TV and snow. But like North Dakota, man, University of North Dakota Grand Forks. I decided I didn't want to spend 4 years living in a tunnel though, because that's how you have to get from building to building in the winter.
God bless them. It's the Arctic Circle. Who are they kidding? Who are they kidding? All right, let's get back to you and talk about what you do. We could argue college stuff all day, but the events you do, you just kind of listed them off. Like, what's the biggest event you've ever done?
So let's see, back in 03 and 04, I worked the Masters. And then when I transitioned out of that company to Thorgard, I've worked the last 11 U.S. Opens. I'll be going to the U.S. Open again this year. That's usually my biggest event from year to year. But now that we have Live Golf too, we see a lot of pros again as well at some of these other events. And so, but the U.S. Open is usually like the biggest monster out there for me nowadays.
Okay, so what does that involve? When you get there, what do you do? How do you set up?
All right, so usually we set up a couple days ahead of time. In fact, the weekend before the U.S. Open is one of my favorite times, because you get to the Open, you get to see all the grandstands, and everyone's working and running around trying to set everything up, but it's empty. There's no spectators yet, and there's no. You can see Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy out there, hitting the practice round on like a Saturday afternoon the week before the U.S. Open, but no one's allowed out there to watch it except for us running around setting up our equipment. And so I'll set up my equipment the weekend before the U.S. Open, and by Monday morning we're cranking out 3 forecasts a day, 5 a.m., 11 a.m., and 5 p.m. To the USGA, and we do that all the way through the last putt.
Okay. Any close calls while you're doing these golf events? I mean, if you had to shut it all down, if you had people almost got struck, or what
Sure.
goes on?
I don't have many close calls as far as like when we have to actually stop. It's typically more so that, unfortunately, sometimes people just don't want to listen. And that's one of the great things about being on this as well, is that I can reiterate, as you've probably done a million times, and most of us tell the public, hey, just because you hear, rumble off in the distance, or you just see a dark cloud, you don't hear anything, it doesn't mean you aren't unsafe. Like, you could still be in a dangerous situation and not know it. And the situation like, was it 4 years ago, 2019, we had the U.S. Women's Open at Country Club of Charleston in May of 2019, I believe it was. And we had stopped for about 30 to 45 minutes. And we had this thunderstorm sitting a few miles away, and it was ripping over there, but we hadn't had much lightning on site. It was loud enough that we'd stopped, and everybody felt good that we were stopped. But all of a sudden we had a lightning strike reach out over the clubhouse, come down, hit the tree right beside the clubhouse, kind of blew out like a bunch of electrical stuff. And at the time, I believe it was Fox that was still covering the USGA. They had a camera in which it caught the moment that the tree got struck. And you can see 2 spectators still walking down the cart path because they think that, hey, that lightning's over there, I'm okay. Not always. And so I can give you one more example if you want to hear this one too. Back in
Oh, I'd love to. These are the kind of stories that I wish I had in my back pocket, like you do,
oh
to pull
yeah,
out for people who are there, who go, doesn't really matter. It's 40 miles away, or it's been 45 minutes, or it's way off in the distance. Go ahead. Tell me another one. Tell me another one.
well, sure, and that's the I would say the greatest part of my job is that I'm right or wrong, literally outside my window. I'm not forecasting for a large area. It's 200 acres,
Mhm.
typically the golf course. So I'm either right or wrong, and that's like black or white. In the case of like 2016 at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, we knew this was coming in that first day, that round one on Thursday. We knew we had a big storm coming in, and we were predicting inches of rain whenever it finally started to come down. And we had gone through the first couple of thunderstorm delays out ahead of this little low in Western PA, and finally we had to shut down for the rest of the day. We started to get too much rain, too much lightning, and yet a nice looking couple, probably in their 20s, was walking down between 9 and 18 toward the clubhouse. But again, like, in the middle of a raging thunderstorm at this point. This was a little bit different than the first scenario. This was a raging thunderstorm. And I told the USGA, I said, they may not care about their safety. They're walking outside in the raging thunderstorm. I was young and, maybe not so smart with all my choices too at one point, but, they may have family members sitting at home that care. And if something happens to them, we're all going to have to answer to it. So don't go outside walking outside the raging thunderstorm because you think it's cool. Like it's not. So there's going to be somebody that cares about you that doesn't want you to go out there and do it. So
That's a good point. Did these guys get in the clubhouse quick enough that they had no near call or close call?
thankfully, we didn't have any close calls with that. But yeah, I mean, I've heard some other security stories that about people, getting freaked out during thunderstorms and running into porta johns when they shouldn't, and unfortunate things happening and stuff. That's probably for off-air kind of talk. But I've heard some stories before that are even beyond that are just like crazy.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. Okay, let's talk about ThorGuard. What do you do for ThorGuard? It says up there, I read your title earlier, managing director. That makes you the boss. Do you own it, or what's the deal?
Oh no, we've got a owner and a CEO still, but no, with ThorGuard, ThorGuard was designed well before me. Actually, we go back. This is our 50th year, and it was originally designed back in the 70s. Crazy enough, and in fact, of all people, I had the son of the actual, like, one of the first inventors reach out to me this year. So it's kind of a crazy world, but in the 70s and 80s, it was still kind of in its infancy, and the current CEO and president of the company above me, he actually was one of the first people to use it at a golf event in which he was working I think it was the Northern Amateur in Chicago. And one of the latest inventors at the time in the late 80s, early 90s came in saying, hey, I got this equipment. It says there's something's going to happen. You need to get everybody inside. And of course, at the time, he's running this amateur event. And he's like, who are you? You're crazy. I don't know. And he came back in a few minutes later and said, no, I'm telling you, something's going to happen. You need to bring everybody in. And he finally shut everything down. And like, as the kids are walking down like the ninth fairway, lightning struck nearby and like knocked them to the ground or whatever. And that was his introduction into the system, and then he got involved in that, and through the 90s, got more and more involved in it. Started selling it throughout Chicago, moved down to Florida. We created a headquarters down here, and so for the past 20 plus years since I joined up with the company, we've got reps all throughout the country. We got distributors internationally, and ThorGuard's biggest thing is, and there's plenty of parks in the Central Florida area that have it, plenty of golf courses that have it as well. Our biggest thing is not just to tell you when to come inside when it's dangerous outside, because that's our specialty, is like the first strike. We want to make sure you get time to get inside before that first strike gets close. But also, when do you go back outside? Waiting 30 minutes after the last lightning strike isn't really a scientific reason to go back out there. It's nice for us to have a scientific instrument outside measuring the static electricity in the atmosphere that determines when it's time to come in and when it's time to go back out.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up, Jake. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to us today. It's always high on my priority list to try to protect people from lightning, from drowning, from hurricanes, from tornadoes, but most especially lightning. Back to the beginning. Thank you very much. That's Jake Swick. If you would like to have one of your questions answered here on Talk to Tom, reach out to us through clickorlando.com/talk to Tom. Submit your questions and join us every Thursday at 5:30 here on KMG. And of course, anytime on News 6 Plus. See ya.